I'm joined now by Congressman Josh Harder. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So we are right now in a moment where we are watching the Republicans wage this broader attack on Medicaid. You were elected back in 2018, back when we saw a very similar situation playing itself out as the one we're seeing right now. And so what is your reaction to watching Republicans having lost 41 seats back in 2018, the biggest margin in the House in modern American history, on the backs of their efforts to dismantle the ACA, now do the exact same thing with Medicaid, where they're taking an axe to right now it was $880 billion, but there's the possibility that they can make deeper cuts so that it's palatable for some of these Republicans who wouldn't even vote for the first iteration of this reconciliation bill. So your reaction to watching them play this playbook again, where really it hurt them so deeply in 2018?
I think it's a tale as old as time. In many ways, the Republican Party only exists to cut people's health care, to pay for tax cuts for billionaires and millionaires across the country. That's what we saw happen under Reagan, happened under Bush. It happened, as you highlighted, under the first Trump administration, which is why I got into politics, and we see it happening right now. And it's amazing that they still haven't learned this lesson, that this is not what the American people want, and most importantly, this is going to do huge damage to our economy, and most importantly, to the folks who are going to be affected. Half my district is on Medicaid, and as you said, I got into this work because in April 2017, my member of Congress voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. My brother was born 10 weeks premature, spent 2 years of his life coming in and out of the hospital, and would have lost his health insurance along with 100,000 other folks in our area if that bill had become law. And so I tried to do something about it. We ran against the guy, beat him, and have been working to try to protect health care ever since. But we're seeing deja vu all over again, where once again they're trying to do this same playbook that is only going to result in people losing their chance to see a doctor and paying higher bills. And to what end? Just to give Elon Musk and other billionaires a bigger tax cut.
You're one of the few Democratic representatives now. After this past election cycle, you watched your district swing 15 points to the right. You're one of the few Democratic members of Congress who are in a Trump district right now. And so as you're talking to your constituents, even folks who may have voted for Trump, how does what we're seeing right now, these attacks against healthcare, these attacks against food stamps, Medicaid, veterans, how is that playing itself out for the folks in your district who, look, this is a district that's ripe for the taking for Republicans, and yet now I'm presumably shooting themselves in the foot?
I think right now we're in a transition where people are pretty disappointed and concerned by what they've seen over the first couple of months of the Trump administration. What my district wanted more than anything was lower cost of living, a better standard of life. That's why a lot of folks in our district voted for Trump and why he flipped my district. And what have they gotten? They've gotten trade wars that have turned their 401ks into 201ks and only raised costs on every American. And now, of course, they're seeing their very health insurance at risk to pay for, massive tax cuts. So I think people are disappointed. That doesn't mean that we can win them over on our side. We still have a lot of work to do to regain the trust of working class voters across the country. And the way to do that is to show them that we really do care about the economy. We care about health care, and we're going to put those items first. In 2024, I think folks heard more about, issues that weren't all that important to them in an area like mine, and not about how we're going to lower the cost of care, how we're going to make sure people can, live across the street from their parents instead of down the stairs because they can't afford to buy their own house, and how are we going to make life better for most Americans. If we hit that message, we can regain a lot of these voters that Trump is alienating at record speed.
And I do want to talk about that in a moment, but I just want to stick with this failed reconciliation bill for a moment. This wasn't palatable for a lot of these Republicans because of the extent to which it would add to the deficit. And so that would portend that maybe we're going to see even deeper cuts to some of these programs. Look, your Republican colleagues they're politicians first and foremost. They understand. It's not like it doesn't escape these people the ways in which this can jeopardize their party politically speaking. And so what are you hearing from these people, maybe behind the scenes, about the prospect of even deeper cuts to Medicaid in a political environment where that's really a death knell for midterms?
They're doing a really tough balancing act right now. But ultimately, I think so far we have seen moderate Republicans more afraid of Trump than the implications that this bill will have on their actual constituents. There's no question, as you said, that folks that are going to lose health insurance are in Republican districts as well as Democratic seats. In fact, Medicaid is disproportionately in red-leaning states and red districts across the country, as well as SNAP benefits and many other essential care that is being cut in this bill. So they're under a lot of pressure. I think ultimately the right thing for them to do, obviously they're not doing it, is to try to reach towards the middle. There is a world here where we could actually achieve a much better reconciliation package that Democrats could vote for, that would lower the deficit, that would get the American economy back on track. What they've decided to do instead is a partisan endeavor that is going to hurt the folks that they're actually representing. And they're doing it, I think, because right now they're more afraid of Trump than the alternative.
Right. And is there some sense among these Republicans that I understand why they were afraid of Trump in the beginning, because he posed the immediate existential risk for them, right? Like if you see that dreaded Trump tweet where he starts to promote a primary opponent from the right, then that's it. Then the prospect of you remaining in Congress grows dimmer and dimmer. But now, I mean, forget what Trump might say, forget what candidate Trump might recruit in the future. If you've got 700,000 people who the majority of whom aren't going to vote for you because of what you're doing, then that becomes a more immediate existential risk for these members of Congress. And so are we seeing that shift happen at all, where it's less about, some tweet where Trump tries to recruit somebody to primary them from the right, and instead it just becomes an immediate issue of, are you even going to be able to stay in your job because your own constituents don't want you there?
I completely agree. Somebody came up to me recently and said, find somebody that loves you the way that Republican members of Congress love massive tax cuts. I think the reality is this is what the Republican Party is all about. Right. This is why they exist. And that's why we see this playbook happening time and time again. The only major bill that Trump got passed and signed into law in the entire 4 years of his first administration was the 2017 tax cut. That was that was it. That was the only major bill they did in all 4 years. And so I don't think it's a huge shock that the only major piece of legislation that this administration is working on in their second term is, again, the exact same playbook. How do we actually lower, give tax cuts by actually kicking people off of health insurance? So, I think that's a combination of they're afraid of Trump, and also this is what they got elected for in the first place, to get, these tax cuts passed, paid for by everybody else's health care.
Right. I mean, we saw the whole song and dance about how they were going to do an infrastructure upgrade, how they were going to pass a middle-class tax cut, how we were going to see a jobs boom, how we were going to have a healthcare plan that was cheaper and more comprehensive. None of that happened. All of their political capital, to your exact point, was used on a tax cut that overwhelmingly favored millionaires, billionaires, and corporations. And then he runs the same playbook in the second term, where he goes on the campaign trail promising to lower costs for all Americans, talks about the price of eggs, of groceries, of housing, of rent, and then gets into office and not only doesn't do anything to actually focus on those issues, but exacerbates the very problem that he won exploiting. And so now everybody's paying more for all of those things. But I guess we should feel fine knowing that at the end of the day, he's secured some $400 million jets for himself. And so I guess we're all whole at the end of that. Talk to me about the Build America caucus that you're the chair of.
Yeah, I think the core idea here is, how do we learn the lessons of some of the challenges and frankly failures of the Biden administration? I passed and voted for the bipartisan infrastructure law. I was really excited about the roads and bridges that was going to unleash across the country. Now, 4 or 5 years later, we still haven't seen that. I've been to a lot of ribbon cuttings, but I haven't actually seen enough new bridges built across the country. In California, we've had high-speed rail that has been delayed for now decades, where $30 billion of taxpayer money has gone and not a single passenger has gone on a train. People are frustrated, and this breeds cynicism and apathy about the political process. When somebody votes for somebody to fix a pothole and they don't actually see that pothole fixed for decades, it's going to lead to people feeling like the entire process is broken, and that's why they need to elect somebody like Donald Trump. And so this caucus is trying to fix it. It's a bipartisan effort across, progressives, moderates, blue dogs, Republicans, trying to figure out how do we actually get America working again so we can build more housing and lower the cost of living in America? How do we build the infrastructure for what we need? And how do we actually get clean energy up and running across a country that desperately needs it to go faster if we're going to be able to hit our climate goals? Those should be messages that are at the core of anybody across the country, Democrat or Republican.
And obviously, this intersects quite well with the whole abundance discourse that's come as the result of Ezra Klein's book. Is there some appetite for? I asked this question because someone brought up a good point to me, and they said that if California, Democrats control California completely on the state level, and so if we wanted to get this done so that it actually worked, they would get it done. And so it would suggest then that there's some internal mechanism preventing us from actually doing the things that we campaign on, or high-speed rail, to your exact point, and that there is really nothing standing in between California Democrats who have full control, supermajority control in this state, and yet the fact that we still can't get something done, still can't make high-speed rail go from LA to San Francisco, and even the pared down version from like Merced to Bakersfield isn't a sure thing either. That if they really did want to do this, there's nothing standing in their way of actually doing it. And so can I just get your reaction to that? Is there the political appetite to really make this stuff happen? Because it's not like we're contending with Ron DeSantis figures. It's not like we're contending with Donald Trump here in California. It's Democrats run the state.
We can make it happen. And California and New York and New Jersey and Colorado and other blue states where there's Democratic supermajorities, these states should be shining beacons of how great life looks like when you elect Democrats. And if we want a majority across the country, if we want to control the White House and Congress, then we need states like California to look a lot better. Trump campaigns saying we don't want the rest of the United States to look like California. Yeah. And a lot of Californians, a lot of folks in my district agree when they see the cost of housing, when they see the homelessness and all of the broken promises on our infrastructure over the years. But what I disagree is I think I sensed a little bit of fatalism in what you were saying, which I think is absolutely untrue, because the bottom line is the voters, the people, the general public desperately wants things to work. And what we have constructed is a set of processes that are, letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, that are essentially geared towards stopping bad projects, which was, certainly important decades ago and still is important in certain cases. But we're letting the processes that allow 0.1% of people to block projects that the 99.9% of people want to move forward happen again and again. And so we can fix that. And most importantly, we have to fix it, both because of the good that's going to be unlocked when we can build the housing, the infrastructure, the energy we need, but also because that's the only route towards political legitimacy nationally, is to make California and New York and these other states look like they're supposed to when you elect folks who believe these values that we agree on.
And what are you able to do from the federal level? Because I would presume that a lot of the issues that are blocking all of this stuff from actually coming to fruition happen at the state level.
Yes and no. I think certainly there are a lot of local, state, county regulations in states like California, but there's already a lot of folks that are working on that. This is to create a national hub, which I think can elevate this issue and make sure that more folks are talking about it and thinking about it. And also, there is a whole lot of federal red tape that compounds the problem at a state and local level, right? Again, think about high-speed rail, where there's a lot of federal permits that are required. Think about the fact that we passed a bipartisan infrastructure law that was supposed to build electric vehicle charging stations across the country, and frankly, didn't. That should be a failure. And again, it was a Democratic president, a Democratic House and Senate that voted for that. We should own those challenges and those failures, and we have to be able to do better. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to earn folks' support. And most importantly, we're not going to be able to actually achieve our goals, whether they're climate or whether they're making sure that people can actually afford the standard of living that they deserve.
Right. Perfectly put. Well, grateful for you bringing these issues to the forefront and for the work you're doing. Congressman, appreciate your time.
Thank you.